I never warned my daughter that the basement of my restoration shop was actually a vault of secrets I'd been keeping from her for 4 years. While she was busy plotting my accidental death with the spineless parasite she was cheating on her husband with, I wasn't just fixing antique toys. I was documenting every single lie, preparing a mechanism more complex than any clock I'd ever built. If you're here to see a predator get captured in real time, make sure you subscribe and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know who is witnessing this confession. It all came to a head the afternoon my assistant called me, her voice trembling so hard the phone rattled against my ear, whispering that Amanda was finally downstairs. I didn't panic. I smiled because the evidence I'd planted wasn't there to make her rich. It was a bomb rigged to blow her fantasy world to dust. The phone rang at 3:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. In my line of work, you learn to appreciate silence. The silence of a clock before the pendulum swings, or the quiet of a doll whose voice box has been broken for 50 years. My shop, Vance's Vintage Restorations on State Street, was usually a sanctuary of this kind of quiet. It smelled of linseed oil, old pine, and the faint metallic tang of brass. I was upstairs in the main showroom, polishing a gear from a 1920s wind-up soldier. My hands, spotted with age but still steady, moved the cloth in small, perfect circles. I was trying to fix a friction point that made the soldier limp. Then, the ring cut through the air. It was a sharp, ugly sound. I didn't answer it immediately. I placed the gear down on the velvet pad. I took a breath. My assistant, Emily, was downstairs managing the inventory. She knew the rules. Never call me on the upstairs line unless the building was burning. I picked up the receiver. "Emily?" "Robert," she whispered. Her voice wasn't just quiet, it was brittle. I could hear the phone rattling against her ear, a tiny plastic clicking sound that betrayed how hard her hand was shaking. The silence of the shop suddenly felt heavy, pressing in on my eardrums. "You need to come down here," she said. "Now." I gripped the edge of the counter. The wood was smooth, worn down by decades of customers paying for memories I had restored. "What's wrong?" "It's Amanda," Emily said. Her whisper dropped an octave, terrified. "She's in the basement. She's going through the workbench." My heart didn't just stop, it seized. It felt like a mainspring winding too tight, threatening to snap against my ribs. "I'm coming down," I said. I hung up the phone gently. I didn't run. At 75, you don't run toward disaster. You walk to meet it. I wiped my hands on my apron, a habit more than a necessity, and moved toward the door that led to the basement stairs. I had been waiting for this moment for 4 years. Most people look at me and see a harmless old man. They see Robert Vance, the guy who fixes porcelain dolls and paints smiles back onto faded tin soldiers. They think I spend my days glued to a magnifying glass, lost in nostalgia. They don't see the man who learned to fix the truth. Every step down those wooden stairs felt heavy, like I was descending into deep water. The air grew cooler as I went down, smelling of damp earth and sawdust. This wasn't just a workshop. It was a vault. To understand why my daughter was robbing me, you have to understand the silence between us. It wasn't an empty silence. It was crowded with things unsaid. It was full of the ghost of the family we used to be. We were a trio once. Margaret, my wife, had taught me this trade. She could look at a shattered pile of ceramic shards and see the face of a doll. "Robert," she used to say, smelling of lavender and strong tea, "you fix broken things. That's who you are." She died 20 years ago. Sometimes, in the dark, I still reach for her side of the bed. I wish she were here to tell me if I was doing the right thing, because what I had prepared in that basement wasn't a repair. It was a demolition. Amanda is 41 now. Smart. Beautiful. She has her mother's chin and my stubbornness. She was everything we hoped for, until the world got its hooks in her. It didn't happen all at once. People don't break like glass. They fracture like old porcelain. Fine hairline cracks that you don't see until the pressure is applied. Somewhere between innocence and ambition, she changed. She stopped looking at people and seeing stories. She started seeing dollar signs. She started seeing leverage. I saw the cracks first. It's my job to see fractures. I noticed the way her eyes lingered on the property deed in my office. I noticed how her hugs became brief, her questions about my health too specific. "Is your blood pressure high, Dad? Are you taking your pills, Dad?" So I did what I do best. I became still. I observed. I documented. I turned my life's work into a trap for my own child. I reached the landing of the basement stairs. The door was slightly ajar. A sliver of yellow light cut across the concrete floor. I could hear the scrape of a drawer opening, the heavy metal slide of the workbench drawer where I kept the precision tools. I paused, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I felt a wave of nausea, a deep, hollow ache in my stomach. It wasn't fear for myself. It was grief. I was about to open this door and prove, once and for all, that my daughter was gone. The evidence I had prepared was sitting in that room. It was going to destroy the fantasy world she had built, a world where she was the victim and I was just an obstacle to her inheritance. I took a breath, steeling myself. I am grateful you are here to witness this, because sometimes love doesn't look like a hug. Sometimes love looks like stopping someone before they destroy themselves completely, even if you have to break their heart to do it. I pushed the door open. I stood in the doorway, watching her. Amanda didn't see me at first. She was hunched over the main workbench, her back to me. The single overhead bulb cast a harsh yellow cone of light over her. She was frantically rifling through stacks of old invoices and blueprints I kept in the lower drawers. Papers were flying, landing on the concrete floor like dead leaves. "It has to be here," she muttered. Her voice was tight, breathless. "He wouldn't hide it. He sent senile to hide it." Hearing your own child call you senile is a specific kind of pain. It's not a sharp stab. It's a dull, heavy ache, like a bruise on the bone. I remained silent. In my previous life, before the toy shop, I was a perfusionist. I ran the heart-lung machines during open-heart surgeries. My job was to monitor the flow, the pressure, the oxygen. You learn to be incredibly still while chaos happens inside a human chest. You learn that a single drop in pressure can mean the end. I was watching my daughter now with that same clinical detachment. I was checking her vitals, and she was crashing. "Amanda," I said. She spun around. The movement was so fast, she knocked a jar of porcelain eyes off the counter. It shattered. Hundreds of tiny glass eyes scattered across the floor, staring up at the ceiling. She gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "Dad, you scared me." "I see that," I said. My voice was calm, too calm. "What are you looking for?" I was looking for a screwdriver," she stammered. Her eyes darted around the room, unable to land on mine. "The drawer upstairs was stuck. I thought you kept the tools down here." It was a lie, a clumsy, desperate lie. "The tools are on the wall, Amanda," I said, pointing to the pegboard behind her where the hammers and screwdrivers hung in neat, outlined rows. They had been for 40 years. She swallowed hard. I could see the pulse jumping in her neck. To understand why my daughter was robbing me, lying to my face in the basement of the building that paid for her college degree, you have to understand the history. You have to understand what we lost. It wasn't always like this. We used to be a family. Margaret, my wife, was the heart of this place. She died 20 years ago, but the shop still held her breath. She was the one who taught me that broken things aren't trash. They're just stories waiting for a new chapter. "Robert," she used to say, her hands covered in paint, "you have steady hands. You keep the blood pumping in the operating room, and you keep the memories alive here. When the cancer took her, it took the warmth from the building. I tried to keep it going for Amanda. Amanda was 21 then. She was shattered. We cried together on these very stairs. But grief does strange things to people. It made me want to preserve the past. It made Amanda want to sell it. It started 6 years ago. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. A subtle shift in the atmosphere. Amanda is 41. She was the pride of my life. But somewhere along the way, the little girl who used to have tea parties with the dolls in the window disappeared. In her place grew a woman who looked at the world and felt she was owed something. She met Michael, my son-in-law, a few years later. Michael is a civil engineer, a good man with a handshake that feels like solid ground. He loved Amanda. I loved him like a son. I thought he would be the one to ground her, to keep her safe. But then came Jason. You don't know Jason yet, but you will. He was the infection, the bacteria that entered the wound and made it rot. I watched Amanda standing there, her expensive heels surrounded by broken glass eyes. She looked terrified, but beneath the fear I saw the anger, the entitlement. "I'm worried about you, Dad," she said, shifting her tone. She tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was a mask. "You're forgetting things. You're leaving the shop unlocked. I just wanted to make sure your papers were in order." "My papers," I repeated. "The deed, the will, the insurance." She listed them off, her voice gaining a little confidence. "You're 75, Dad. We have to be practical." I leaned against the doorframe. The wood was cool against my shoulder. "I am very practical, Amanda," I said. "That's why I came down here." I walked past her. I moved to the workbench. I didn't look at the papers she had scattered. I looked at the one thing she hadn't touched. On the corner of the bench sat a music box. French, 1890s. Hand-painted with roses. "Do you remember this?" I asked. She glanced at it, impatient. "Mom's old music box. What about it?" "She gave it to me 3 days before she died," I said softly. "She told me to keep it safe." "Dad, please," Amanda sighed, checking her watch. "I don't have time for stories. I have a meeting." "Make time," I said. The command was sharp. It cut through the air. Amanda froze. She hadn't heard me use that tone since she was a teenager. "You're not looking for a screwdriver," I said, turning to face her. "And you're not looking for my will to make sure I'm safe. You're looking for it to see how much you get. That's not fair," she cried, her face flushing red. "I have bills, Dad. Michael and I, the market is tough. You're sitting on a gold mine here on State Street, tinkering with toys while we struggle." "Michael isn't struggling," I said. "Michael is content. You are the one who is hungry." She glared at me. The mask slipped completely. "It's my inheritance," she hissed. "It's Mom's legacy. It shouldn't be rotting in a basement full of junk." I looked at her. I didn't see my daughter. I saw a stranger who had been poisoned by greed and whispered lies. I knew then that I had to do it. I had to let the trap spring. "You're right," I said quietly. "It is a legacy." I picked up the music box. My fingers brushed the winding key. "But you don't know what's inside it." I held the music box in the dim light of the basement, my thumb resting on the cold metal key. Amanda was staring at it, annoyance flickering in her eyes. She didn't see a weapon. She'd just seen an old trinket. To understand why I was trembling, we have to go back. We have to go back to the day the cracks started showing. The day Margaret warned me from the grave. The memory hit me hard, washing over the basement like a cold tide. 20 years ago, our bedroom, the room had smelled of antiseptic, and the lavender lotion Margaret used to hide the scent of the sickness. The cancer was winning. It was a slow, cruel process, like rust eating through iron. I was sitting by her bedside, listening to the shallow rattle of her breathing. As a perfusionist, I spent my life listening to the rhythm of blood and air. I knew what that sound meant. It meant the machine was shutting down. She grabbed my hand. Her grip was weak, trembling, but her eyes were fierce. They were clear, suddenly, stripped of the pain medication's fog. "She's going to need you, Robert," she whispered. Her voice was like dry leaves scraping together. "I know," I said, stroking her hair. "I'll take care of her. I'll make sure she's happy." "No," Margaret said. She squeezed my hand, her fingernails digging into my skin. "Not happy. Safe." She took a ragged breath. "Amanda, she has a hunger, Robert. She needs things to feel valuable. That terrifies me." "She's just a girl, Maggie," I had said, dismissing it. Amanda was 21 then. "You have to protect her," Margaret insisted, her eyes locking onto mine. "Protect her from the world. And sometimes you have to protect her from herself." 3 days before she died, Margaret made me open the safe and take out this music box. It was French, painted with delicate pink roses. "Le Villon Rose. Keep this safe," she said. "Don't give it to her yet." "Why?" I asked. "You'll know," she said. "When the time comes, you'll know." She died on a Sunday. I stood at her grave holding that box in my coat pocket, my hand clenched around it. I didn't know it then, but she hadn't just given me a keepsake. She had handed me a fail-safe. Years passed. Quietly, The sharp edge of grief dulled into a dull ache. Amanda grew up. She went to the University of Chicago. She was brilliant, driven, and for a long time, she was kind. She met Michael. Michael Foster was a civil engineer. He was a man of structure and stability. Tall, with kind eyes and a laugh that rumbled in his chest. He loved Amanda. You could see it in the way he held her coat for her, the way he watched her when she was talking. I thought we were safe. I thought Margaret's fear was just the fever talking. I thought the hunger she warned me about had been fed by love. But greed is a slow poison. It accumulates in the system like heavy metals. You don't notice it until the organ fails. The shift began in May 2021. Amanda stopped coming for Sunday dinners. At first it was work. Then it was plans with friends. When she finally did come to the shop, she didn't ask about me. She didn't ask about the restoration of the 1930s carousel horse I was so proud of. She stood in the center of the showroom, looking up at the tin ceiling, her eyes scanning the cracks in the plaster. "Dad," she said. Her voice echoed in the quiet shop. I was painting the uniform of a tin soldier, using a brush with 3 hairs. I didn't look up. "Hello, sweetheart." "This building," she said. "Do you have any idea what property values on State Street are right now?" I paused. The brush hovered over the soldier's chest. "I know the taxes are high," I said. She walked over to the window, looking out at the busy street. "It's insane, Dad. Commercial real estate is peaking. People are paying cash for shells just to gut them." "This isn't a shell," I said, finally looking up. "It's my life. It's your mother's life." She turned to me. Her expression was flat. "It's a good location," she said. "But the building? It's old, Dad. The wiring, the plumbing. It's a liability. I maintain it," I said. "Have you appraised it?" she asked. Her voice was too casual. Sharp, like a scalpel, hidden in a bouquet of flowers. "For insurance? Or for selling?" "Just planning," she added quickly when she saw my face. She picked up a rag doll from the counter, then set it down without looking at it. She dusted her hands as if the doll were dirty. "You need to think about your retirement, Dad. You can't breathe these fumes forever." "I'm fine," I said. She sighed. It was a loud, impatient sound. "It's not just about you, Dad. It's about the legacy." Legacy, that was the first time she used the word as a weapon. She didn't mean history. She didn't mean the joy of a child getting a fixed toy. She meant cash. She meant equity. 2 months later, in July, the fracture split open. She came alone. It was a hot day, the air conditioner humming loudly in the window. She paced the floor, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Click, click, click. A countdown. "The trust fund. Mom left," she said, not bothering with a greeting. "What about it? How much is in it?" "Exactly." I put down my brush. I carefully cleaned the bristles. I needed a moment to steady my hands. "Your mother wanted it protected until you were ready," I said. "Until you were 45, or until I deemed it necessary. I'm 35, she snapped. Her voice cracked, high and ugly. "I'm married. I have a career. I'm not a child, Robert." She called me Robert, not Dad. Her eyes flashed. I saw it then, the hunger Margaret had talked about. It was a desperate, clawing thing behind her pupils. "It's not about age, Amanda," I said softly. "It's about values." "Values? Values?" She laughed. It was a cold sound, devoid of humor. "Values don't pay the mortgage, Dad. Values don't get you a summer house in the Hamptons. Values don't get you respect." "Is that what you want?" I asked. "Respect? I want what's mine," she shouted. She walked out. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully, a stark contrast to the silence she left behind. I stood there in the empty shop. I felt a phantom pain in my chest, a tightening. I heard Margaret's voice. "She needs things to feel valuable." I went to my desk. I took out a black notebook. I wrote the date, August 14th, 2021. Amanda asked for the money. She didn't ask how I was. The cracking has begun. I didn't know it then, but she wasn't acting alone anymore. The poison had a source, and soon he would walk through my door. February 2022. The winter that year was harsh. The wind off Lake Michigan had teeth, cutting through the thickest coats. But the coldest thing that entered my shop wasn't the weather. It was a name, Jason Reed. "He's a new colleague," Amanda said over the phone. Her voice was giddy, too bright. It sounded like a high-pitched frequency that only a parent could hear as a warning siren. "He's smart, ambitious. He reminds me of Michael." That was the first lie. Jason was nothing like Michael. Michael was oak. Jason was veneer. I met him a month later. The bell above the shop door chimed, a cheerful sound that usually signaled a child running in. I looked up from the counter. They walked in together. Amanda and Jason. They weren't touching, but the air between them was charged. They stood too close. Their shoulders brushed when they moved. It was the kind of intimacy that screams louder than holding hands. Jason was young, 29, maybe 30. He wore a suit that cost more than my delivery truck. His hair was cut with surgical precision, and his teeth were so white they looked porcelain. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the toys. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the width of the floorboards. He looked at the shop like he was pricing inventory at a liquidation sale. "Mr. Vance?" he said, stepping forward. He extended a hand. His skin was soft, uncalloused. His grip was slippery, practiced. It was the handshake of a man who moved money, not mountains. "Amanda talks about this place constantly," he said. His voice was smooth, like oil pouring over glass. "Does she?" I asked. I didn't let go of his hand immediately. I held it a second too long, testing the tension. He pulled back, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face before the smile plastered back on. "It's incredible," Jason said. He walked past a display of 19th century trains without glancing at them. He tapped his knuckles against the support beam. Thud, thud, solid. "Prime real estate," he murmured, more to himself than to me. He whistled low. "You're sitting on a gold mine here, Robert. If you don't mind me saying." "I do mind," I said. My voice was quiet, but it stopped him. He turned, blinking. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second. A glitch in the program before resetting. "Just admiring the assets, sir," he said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "The Gold Coast is expanding. A space with this square footage, unheard of. Asset. My life was an asset. My wife's memory was equity. The workbench where I taught Amanda to tie her shoes was just square footage. I felt a phantom pressure in my chest. In the operating room, when a heart is struggling, the monitors whined. My internal monitors were screaming. This man wasn't here to admire my work. He was here to calculate the demolition costs. "This isn't an asset," I said, stepping out from behind the counter. I wiped my hands on my apron. "This is a home, and it's not for sale." Jason chuckled. It was a patronizing sound. "Everything is for sale, Robert. Eventually. It's just a matter of timing." He looked at Amanda, and that was the moment my heart truly broke. Amanda wasn't looking at me. She wasn't looking at the toys she grew up with. She was looking at him. She looked at him with a mix of desperation and adoration. She looked at him like he was the sun, and she was freezing to death. I saw the hunger in her eyes, the same hunger Margaret had warned me about, being fed by his attention. "Dad," Amanda said, her voice tight. "Jason is a financial planner. He's just trying to help. He thinks we could optimize." "Optimize?" I repeated. "Is that what we call it now?" "We're just thinking about the future," Jason said, stepping closer to Amanda. He placed a hand on the small of her back. A possessive gesture. "Amanda is worried about you. Managing the place this big. It's a lot of stress for a man. Your age." "I manage just fine," I said. "For now," Jason said softly. The threat hung in the air, suspended in the dust motes dancing in the light. I watched them leave an hour later. They walked out into the cold, gray afternoon. I saw them through the window. Jason said something, and Amanda laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a nervous, eager sound. I locked the door. I turned the sign to closed. I went to the back room and added my chair. The shop was silent, but it felt different now. It felt violated. I thought of Michael, the good man waiting at home for a wife who was already gone. I pulled out my notebook. My hand shook as I uncapped the pen. March 12, 2022. Jason Reed, financial planner. Predator. He called the shop an asset. Amanda is under his spell. She is fracturing faster now. I sat in the dark for a long time. I knew then that I wasn't just dealing with a greedy daughter. I was dealing with a team, and they were already measuring me for a coffin. 2 days later, the bell didn't ring. Instead, there was a sharp, rhythmic rapping on the glass of the front door. I looked up from my magnifying station. I was restringing Marionette from the 1950s, a delicate operation that required holding 3 different tensions at once. Standing on the sidewalk, wrapped in a coat that looked like it had survived a war, was Betty Higgin. Betty owns the antique shop next door, Higgins Curios. We are the last 2 dinosaurs on the block. While the rest of State Street turned into high-end boutiques selling $50 candles and minimalist furniture, we stayed. We smelled like dust and history. I unlocked the door. A gust of freezing wind blew in, carrying the smell of exhaust and the clove cigarettes. Betty smoked. "Robert," she said. She didn't come in. She stayed on the threshold, exhaling a plume of gray smoke into the gray. Her face was a map of deep lines, etched by decades of squinting at hallmarks on silver. "Betty," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "It's too cold for a social call." "It's not a social call," she said. She tapped her cigarette against the brick wall. Ash fluttered down to the snow-dusted pavement. She looked past me, into the dark depth of my shop. Then she looked back at me, her eyes narrow and hard like polished agates. "Who was the pretty boy with your daughter the other day?" My stomach tightened. "A colleague," I said. "Why?" Betty took a long drag. The tip of her cigarette glowed angry orange. "Colleague?" "Right." "Why, Betty?" I asked again, stepping out onto the stoop. I closed the door behind me to keep the heat in. "Because he came back yesterday," she said. The cold air suddenly felt sharper, biting through my wool sweater. "Amanda wasn't here yesterday. The shop was closed." "I know," Betty said. She pointed with her cigarette across the street, toward the alleyway between the bakery and the bank. "He wasn't here to visit, Robert. He was here to hunt." "What did he do?" "He stood right there," she said, gesturing to a spot of pavement that was currently empty. "For 20 minutes. He didn't look at the windows. He didn't look at the toys." She turned her gaze up toward the roof of my building. "He was taking pictures, Robert, of the flashing around the chimney, of the foundation line. He walked around the back to the loading dock and spent 5 minutes photographing the brickwork." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter wind. It was the sensation of a cold fluid entering a warm vein. "Maybe he likes architecture," I said weakly. It was a pathetic defense, and we both knew it. Betty laughed, a dry, hacking sound. She dropped the cigarette butt and crushed it under the heel of her boot. "Grind, twist. He likes money, Robert," she said. "I've been in this business 40 years. I know a collector, I know a lover, and I know a liquidator. That boy?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. "He was stripping the meat off the bone with his eyes. He wasn't looking at a building. He was looking at a teardown." She adjusted her scarf, her expression softening just a fraction. "Amanda is a good girl, Robert. Or she was. But that boy, he's a shark in a tailored suit. If he's sniffing around the foundation, it means he's planning to pull the whole thing down." She turned to go back to her own shop, then paused. "Check your locks," she said without looking back. "And check your blind spots." I stood on the sidewalk for a long time after she left. I looked at the spot across the street where Jason had stood. I tried to imagine him there, camera raised, dissecting my life, calculating the demolition costs, while I sat inside painting a doll's face. The feeling of violation was absolute. It wasn't just greed anymore. It was an invasion. I went back inside and locked the door. I threw the deadbolt, then the chain. I went to the window and peered out through the display of tin soldiers. The street looked the same as it always did. Busy, indifferent. But now, every shadow looked like him. I went to my desk. I sat down, my hands trembling slightly. Internal bleeding is the most dangerous kind because you don't see it until the pressure drops. Jason and Amanda weren't just waiting for me to die. They were accelerating the process. They were already appraising the corpse. I opened the notebook again. March 14, 2022. Betty confirms surveillance. Jason returned alone, taking structural photos. They are not planning a renovation. They are planning an extraction. I closed the book. The shop was silent, but the silence had changed. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was the silence of a held breath, the silence of a predator waiting in the tall grass. I knew then that I needed eyes of my own. If they were going to watch me, I was going to watch them back. June 2023. The rain that summer was relentless. It battered the windows of the shop for weeks, turning the world outside into a gray smear. The dampness seeped into the old brick, making the wood swell and the doors stick. Michael came to the shop on a Tuesday afternoon. When he walked in, I didn't recognize him for a split second. The man who entered was a shadow of the person I knew. He was 10 years older than the last time I saw him. His shoulders were slumped, his coat hung loose on his frame, and his eyes were hollowed out, rimmed with red. "Robert," he said. His voice was a rasp, like he hadn't used it in days. "Michael." I put down my tools. I locked the front door and flipped the sign. "Some things require privacy. Come, sit." We sat in the back room. I poured him black coffee from the pot that always sits on the hot plate. He held the mug with both hands, seeking warmth, but he didn't drink. "She's different, Robert," he said, staring into the dark liquid. It's not just distance. She's turned into someone else. Tell me," I said. "She hides her phone," Michael whispered. "She takes it into the bathroom. She sleeps with it under her pillow. If I walk into the room when she's texting, she flips it over. Have you asked her?" "I tried." Michael let out a shaky breath. "She laughed at me. She told me I was paranoid. She said I was suffocating her, that I was insecure and controlling. Gaslighting." I felt a flash of anger so hot it burned my throat. She wasn't just lying to him. She was dismantling his reality. She was making him question his own mind so he wouldn't question her actions. It's a cruel, psychological violence. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," Michael said, tears welling in his eyes. "I wake up at night and check the room to make sure I'm actually there." "You are not losing your mind," I said firmly. I wanted to reach across the table and tell him everything. I wanted to tell him about Jason, about the photos, about the structural engineer posing as a lover, but I couldn't. Not yet. In surgery, you don't cut until the patient is stabilized. Michael was crashing. If I told him the truth now, he would shatter. "There's something else," Michael said. He looked up, and the fear in his face was palpable. "What is it?" "She asks about you," he said. I went still. "Me?" "She asks about your will," Michael said. "Not in a normal way. She asks if you've updated it recently. She asks if you have life insurance. She asks if the policy covers natural causes." The air in the room seemed to vanish. "Natural causes," I repeated. "She says we need to be prepared," Michael said. "She says people your age can go suddenly." "But Robert, she doesn't say it like she's worried. She says it like she's calculating." I looked at this good, broken man. He was the collateral damage. Amanda and Jason were building a future on the ruins of his life, and my death. I reached for my notebook. I had to write it down, or I would scream. June 18, 2023. Michael confirms financial inquiries. She is checking the payout. She is checking the timeline. The plan is in motion. 3 months later, the dam broke. September 2023. My phone rang at midnight. The sound was jarring in the silence of my apartment. I fumbled for the receiver in the dark. "Hello?" I found them. It was Michael. He wasn't whispering this time. He was crying, silent, shaking sobs that racked his body. I could hear the sound of rain hitting a car roof. "Where are you, Michael?" I sat up, switching on the lamp. "Michigan Avenue," he choked out. "An apartment complex." I tracked her phone. I know I shouldn't have, but I had to know. "Did you go in?" "No," Michael said. "I'm sitting in the car, across the street." I saw her car pull in. Then I saw him. My hand tightened on the phone. "Who?" "Jason," Michael spat the name. It sounded like poison in his mouth. That guy she brought to dinner. The collie, he has a key, Robert. He walked right in, and she opened the door for him. She was wearing... He broke off, unable to finish. Michael, I said, listen to me closely. I'm going in, Michael said, his voice rising, hysteria creeping in. I'm going to kick the door down. I'm going to kill him. No, I shouted. The force of my voice stopped him. Why not? He screamed into the phone. She's my wife. He's in there with my wife. Because this is bigger than an affair, I said. My heart was hammering, but my voice was ice cold. I had to be the perfusionist now. I had to control the flow. If you go in there now, you blow everything up. You get a divorce, yes. But they win. Win? Michael asked, confused. What are you talking about? She isn't just cheating on you, Michael, I said. She is coming for me. She is coming for the shop. She is coming for the estate. Silence on the line, just the rhythmic thwack hiss of windshield wipers. The rest? Michael whispered. They are planning to take everything, I said. If you confront her tonight, she will hide the money. She will destroy the evidence. She will spin a story that makes you look like the abuser. I took a breath. This was the hardest thing I had ever asked anyone to do. I need you to stay in the car, I said. I need you to drive home. I need you to walk into that house, lie down in that bed, and pretend you know nothing. I can't, Michael sobbed. Robert, I can't. You have to, I said. For Margaret, for me, and for the man you used to be. There was a long, agonizing silence. I pictured him sitting there in the dark, the rain streaming down the glass, watching the window where his life was being dismantled. Okay, he whispered finally. Okay. That night Michael ceased to be just my son-in-law. He became my ally. He became a spy in his own home. He stayed. He watched. He let her lie to his face, day after day. And while he played the part of the oblivious husband, I began to build the trap that would catch them both. January 2026. Time is a strange thing when you are living a double life. For nearly 18 months, Michael and I had existed in a state of suspended animation. We smiled at family gatherings. We passed the turkey at Thanksgiving. We asked about work. We pretended the rot wasn't spreading the floorboards. I decided to visit Amanda at her office. It was a Tuesday, gray and biting cold. I told myself I was going there to surprise her with lunch. A peace offering, a fatherly gesture. But deep down, I think I was going there to prove myself wrong. I think a small, foolish part of me still hoped to find my daughter sitting at her desk, working hard, innocent of the monster I suspected she had become. Her office was in the financial district, Gold Coast Consulting. The building was a monolith of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the low-hanging clouds. The lobby smelled of ozone, expensive coffee, and aggressive ambition. It was a world away from the linseed oil and sawdust of my shop. Here, nothing was fixed. Things were only traded, leveraged, or liquidated. I took the elevator to the 14th floor. My reflection in the polished steel doors looked out of place. An old man in a wool coat, holding a paper bag from the deli. I had bought her a pastrami on rye, her favorite. I found her corner office. The hallway was silent, the plush carpet swallowing the sound of my boots. The door was cracked open a few inches. I raised my hand to knock. Then I heard the voice. How much longer, Mandy? It was Jason. The tone wasn't professional. It was whining, petulant, vibrating with impatience. I froze. My hand hovered in the air. I don't know, Amanda replied. Her voice sounded tired, flattened by the weight of the conversation. He's 75. He's stubborn. You know that. If he lives another 10 years, we're stuck. Jason snapped. I heard the sound of pacing, heavy, agitated steps. We need that capital now. The San Diego deal won't wait forever. The investors are getting twitchy. I stood in the hallway, pressing myself against the wall. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. A frantic, bird-like fluttering. Capital, that's what I was. Not a father, not a craftsman. Capital, he has high blood pressure, Amanda said. Her voice was cool, detached. It was the voice of someone discussing a faulty piece of machinery. Not a parent. Dr. Stevens says he's stable, she continued, but stability is relative at his age. Things happen, accidents, strokes. My blood ran cold. The sensation was physical, a wave of ice water cascading down my spine. She wasn't just waiting for nature to take its course. She was banking on it. She was hoping for it. Once he's gone, Jason said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Run the numbers again? Best case? The shop, the building on State Street, the trust fund, the house in Highland Park. Amanda listed them. She recited the inventory of my life without a stutter, conservatively. 12 million, maybe 15, if we get a bidding war on the commercial space. 12 million, Jason whispered. I could hear the hunger in his voice. It was obscene. And Michael? Jason asked. What if the Boy Scout grows a spine? I held my breath. This was the moment. Bird, this was where she could defend her husband. Michael is a puppet, Amanda said. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him. He's terrified of losing me. I'll get the power of attorney, liquidate the assets, and then, once the check's clear, I'll file for divorce. I backed away. I moved slowly, heel to toe, the way you move when you are trying not to wake a sleeping beast. I didn't breathe until I was back in the elevator. I hit the button for the lobby. As the doors slid shut, sealing off the 14th floor, I looked down at the paper bag in my hand. The grease from the pastrami was staining the bottom. I walked out of the building. I walked to the nearest trash can, a sleek, brushed metal cylinder, and dropped the bag inside. Thud. I walked to my truck. I sat in the driver's seat, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. The heater was off, but I didn't feel the cold. I felt something inside me turn to stone. I didn't cry. You don't cry when the diagnosis is terminal. You prepare. She wasn't my daughter anymore. The girl who used to dance in the shop window while I fixed music boxes was dead. The woman upstairs was a predator, and I was the prey. I started the engine. The truck rumbled to life, a steady, reliable sound in a world that had suddenly lost its axis. Okay, I said to the empty cab. Okay. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one. But they wouldn't be fighting a confused old man. They would be fighting Robert Vance. And I fixed things, even if I have to break them first. A week later, I went to see a man who specializes in broken hearts. Not the poetic kind, but the mechanical kind. Dr. Stevens is the best cardiologist in Chicago. His office on Michigan Avenue doesn't look like a clinic. It looks like a private library. Dark mahogany wainscoting, leather chairs that sigh when you sit in them, and a silence so expensive you feel guilty coughing. I sat on the exam table, the paper crinkling under my legs. The room smelled of rubbing alcohol and latex, a scent that instantly transported me back 30 years. I closed my eyes. For a second I wasn't an old man fixing toys. I was back in the OPR, the perfusion machine humming beside me, watching the red lines on the monitor, holding a stranger's life in the balance of flow and pressure. I knew the heart better than most. I knew it wasn't the seat of the soul. It was a pump, a muscular, electric pump that could fail if the resistance became too high. The door opened. Dr. Stevens walked in. He is a busy man, always in motion. He checks his watch, a heavy platinum piece, every 3 minutes. He wears Italian suits beneath his white coat. Robert, he said, not looking up from his tablet. He tapped the screen with a stylus. Tap, tap, tap. Good to see you. Nurse says your pressure is up today. 150/95. Traffic, I lied. And the weather. Dr. Stevens finally looked at me. He frowned, peering over his rimless glasses. He put the tablet down on the counter with a definitive click. You're usually steady as a rock, Robert, he said. He picked up his stethoscope. Deep breath. I inhaled. The cold metal disc pressed against my ribs. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. How are you feeling, really? He asked, moving the disc to my back. Fine, I said. Why? Dr. Stevens pulled the stethoscope from his ears and let it hang around his neck. He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight. Your daughter called the office yesterday, he said. The air in the room went still. I focused on the anatomical chart on the wall. a cross-section of the aorta. Did she? I kept my voice flat. She was very persistent, Dr. Stevens said. He chose his words carefully, like he was navigating a minefield of patient confidentiality. She wanted a full update on your condition. Specifically, your hypertension. She worries, I said. She's a good daughter. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Dr. Stevens hesitated. He picked up a pen and clicked it. Click, click, crick. Robert, she didn't ask if you were okay. She asked about triggers. I turned my head slowly to look at him. Triggers? She wanted to know the threshold, Stevens said, his voice lowering. She asked if sudden emotional stress, shock, anger, fear, could precipitate a cardiac event. She used the term catastrophic failure. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands, resting on my knees, went cold. In my old job, we called it a blowout. When the pressure in the lines gets too high, the system ruptures. Amanda wasn't asking how to keep me calm. She was asking how hard she had to push before I popped. What did you tell her? I asked. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from inside a tin drum. I told her that with your condition, stress is obviously a risk factor. Stevens said. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. But Robert, she seemed disappointed. Disappointed, I repeated. She asked if I could increase your dosage of beta blockers. She suggested you might be unstable. He looked at me with genuine concern now. Robert, is everything okay at home? Is there something happening that's putting you under duress? I looked at this man of science. He saw arteries and valves. He didn't see the invisible knife my daughter was holding to my throat. Everything is fine, I lied. Just business. Selling the building. It's a lot of paperwork. Right, Stevens said. He didn't believe me, but he didn't press. Watch your salt. And Robert, try to avoid shocks. I will, I said. I left the office. I walked out into the biting wind of Michigan Avenue. The city moved around me, taxis honking, people shouting into phones. But I was in a bubble of silence. The plan was clearer now. It wasn't poison. It wasn't a brake line cut on my truck. It was cleaner than that. They were going to scare me to death. They were going to pressure me, harass me, threaten the shop, threaten my legacy, until my heart, my old tired pump, finally gave out. They wanted a natural death. A funeral with flowers and sad speeches, where Amanda could dab her eyes and say, the stress was just too much for him. I stopped at a crosswalk. The light was red. I put a hand over my chest. I could feel the rhythm. Thump, thump. They thought my heart was a weakness. They thought it was a ticking clock. But they forgot one thing. I spent 40 years hearts beating when they wanted to stop. I know how to regulate the pressure. I wasn't going to have a heart attack. I was going to have a reckoning. I turned my collar up against the wind and started walking toward the subway. I had a phone call to make. Not to the police. Not yet. I needed a lawyer, and I needed a trap. I called William Stone at 6 Arrows in AM. William has been my lawyer for 30 years. He is a man who still uses a fountain pen and believes that a contract isn't valid unless you've looked the other man in the eye. He met me at the shop, an hour later, before the city had fully woken up. We sat in the back room, the air heavy with the smell of stale coffee and impending rain. I need to rewrite everything, I said. I pushed the existing trust documents across the scratched oak table. The will, the power of attorney, the medical directives, all of it. William picked up the papers. He is a heavy man with a face that naturally settles into a frown, but today he looked genuinely pained. Robert, he said, his voice gravelly, you're talking about disinheriting your only child. This is extreme. It's not extreme, I said. I looked at the wall where a photo of Margaret hung. She was smiling, holding a baby Amanda in a sun hat. It's the fence. If you do this, William warned, tapping the paper with a thick finger, she will contest it. She will claim you were incompetent, undue influence. Senility, that's why we need proof, I said. And that's why I'm not just changing the will. I'm building a case. We spent 2 hours locking down the estate. We created a blind trust. We set up trigger clauses. By the time William left, my legacy was a fortress. But legal papers are just paper. They can be torn up, they can be burned. I needed something harder. I needed the truth, recorded in high definition. I went to the basement. I looked at my toys. Shelves of them, waiting, silent. Trains that had traveled imaginary miles. Dolls that had been hugged by generations of children. They were innocent objects, but innocence is the best camouflage. Amanda ignored them. To her, they were just inventory. Dusty junk waiting to be liquidated. That was her mistake. She saw the price tag. She never saw the eyes. I needed help. I'm good with gears and springs, but I don't know digital encryption. I called Tyler. Tyler is 22. He runs a computer repair service out of a van that smells like energy drinks and burnt solder. He fixes the shop's laptop when the inventory software crashes. He wears oversized hoodies and chews gum loud enough to wake the dead. He came to the back door at noon. What's the job? Bobby, he asked, popping a bubble. Snap. Your Wi-Fi down again? No, I said. I need surveillance. Tyler stopped chewing. He lowered his sunglasses. Say again. I need listening devices at keeping my voice low. Small, high quality, long battery life. And I need cameras that can see in low light. Tyler raised an eyebrow. He looked around the dusty shop, at the wooden soldiers and the antique rocking horse. You joining the CIA, Bobby? Or did someone steal a rare Beanie Baby? I'm protecting my family, I said. The lie tasted sour, but it was close enough to the truth. Can you do it? Tyler looked at me. He saw the set of my jaw. He saw that my hands weren't shaking. He nodded. Yeah, I can do it, but it's gonna cost you. I don't care about the cost. We worked through the night. It was a strange partnership, the old craftsman and the young hacker. We didn't put cameras on the walls. That's amateur. That's what people look for. We put them inside the inventory. The train, I said, pointing to the 1947 Lionel set on the display table. Tyler stripped a tiny microphone, no bigger than a grain of rice, and soldered it into the coal car. It was invisible amidst the black plastic coal. The doll, I said next. We took a German bisque doll from the top shelf. She had glass eyes that blinked when you tipped her. Tyler carefully removed the left eye. He replaced the pupil with a pinhole camera lens. Creepy, Tyler muttered as he reassembled the face. Seriously creepy. Effective, I said, and then the masterpiece. I brought out Margaret's music box. Careful with this one, I warned. It's fragile. Tyler examined it. False bottom? Yes. We hid a high-fidelity digital recorder inside the mechanism compartment. We wired it to activate on voice frequency. It would sit right on the workbench, the very spot where Amanda sat when she came to snoop. By 4:00 a.m. the shop was wired. It looked exactly the same. The dust motes danced in the same patterns. The smell of oil was the same, but now the shop was listening. This is spy movie stuff, Tyler said, packing his gear. He handed me a tablet. You can watch the feed here, leave, or access the cloud storage. He paused at the door. He looked at me, really looked at me. Who's the target, Bobby? I hesitated. My daughter. Tyler stopped chewing his gum. His face fell. Damn, Bobby. That's cold. Not as cold as she is, I said. Tyler left. I was alone. I placed the toys, the doll on the shelf, staring down at the entrance. The train on the table, the music box on the workbench in the basement. Then I baited the trap. I told Emily, my assistant, that I had a series of doctor's appointments every Tuesday afternoon. I told her I would be gone from 2 p.m. to 5 I knew Emily would mention it to Amanda. Emily is innocent. She thinks Amanda is a concerned daughter. Then I waited. The following Tuesday, I left the shop. I walked 2 blocks, circled back, and sat in my truck in the alleyway behind the building. I opened the tablet Tyler gave me. The screen flickered to life. For 20 minutes, nothing. Just the silence of the shop. Then the back door opened. Amanda walked in. She didn't knock. She used her key. She wasn't alone. Jason was with her. I watched on the small screen. my heart beating a slow, painful rhythm against my ribs. They didn't look like lovers. They looked like burglars. "Check the upstairs," Jason said. His voice came through the speakers, crisp and clear. "He's gone," Amanda said. Emily said, "He's at the cardiologist. We have 2 hours." She walked straight to the basement. I switched the camera feed to the doll I had placed on the bottom shelf of the storage rack. I watched my daughter tear through my desk. She was aggressive, pulling drawers out until they hit the stops. "Nothing," she hissed. "Just old tax return. Keep looking." Jason's voice drifted down from the stairs. "Look for the trust amendment." Amanda stood up. She leaned against the workbench. Her hand rested inches from the music box. She picked it up. I held my breath in the truck cab. "Don't wind it. Just put it down." "Old junk," she muttered. She turned it over, looking for a price tag, then set it down hard. The impact triggered the recorder. She pulled out her phone. She dialed the number. Jason came down the stairs, answering his own phone. They were in the same room, but calling someone else. "Stephen's office," she said into the phone. Her voice changed instantly. It became sweet, worried, the voice of a grieving child. "Yes, this is Amanda Vance. I'm calling about my father, Robert. I'm so worried about this new medication." She listened for a moment. I know, she said, "but he seems so confused lately." "Dizzy? Are you sure the dosage is right? Shouldn't it be higher?" She paused. She looked at Jason and winked. "Okay," she said. "Thank you. We just want to make sure he's comfortable." She hung up. The smile vanished. "Stevens is a stone wall," she told Jason. "He won't up the beta blockers." "Then we do it the other way," Jason said. He leaned in close to the hidden microphone. "We mess with the pills he has." "What?" Amanda asked. "Switch them," Jason said. "Swap the blood pressure meds for sugar pills. Or caffeine pills." "Jason," Amanda said. There was a hesitation, a tiny flicker of humanity. "Mandy," he said, grabbing her shoulders. 12 million, San Diego. The life we deserve. She looked at him. The hesitation vanished. "He keeps the spare bottle in the upstairs bathroom," she said. I closed the laptop. I sat in the darkness of the alley. The rain had started to fall, drumming against the roof of the truck. I didn't feel anger anymore. Anger is hot. This was something else. This was absolute zero. I had the recording. I had the intent. I had the conspiracy. It was time to end this, not with a shout, but with a dinner. January 15, 2029. I chose the date carefully. It was the anniversary of the day Margaret and I opened the shop 45 years ago. It felt appropriate. We started building the legacy on this day, and tonight I was going to save it. I invited them to dinner. A family celebration, I told Amanda over the phone. My voice was steady. "I've made a decision about the estate. We need to sign some papers." She sounded thrilled. Through the phone, I could almost hear the calculation, the mental math of compound interest and real estate value. Finally, she probably thought. Payday. I chose the Prime Cut Steakhouse. It's a place of dark wood, low light, and heavy curtains. It smells of expensive red wine and seared meat. It is a place where business is done, where fortunes change hands over white tablecloths. It was the perfect stage for an execution. I arrived 30 minutes early. I sat at a corner table facing the door. I ordered an iced water. No alcohol. I needed my mind sharp and needed to be the perfusionist one last time. Monitoring the flow, controlling the pressure, on the floor beside me sat my old leather satchel. Inside was the music box and a black USB drive. I watched the door. People came and went, laughing couples, tired businessmen. They didn't know that a tragedy was sitting in the corner, wearing a tweed jacket. At 7:00 p.m. exactly, they walked in, Amanda and Michael. Amanda looked radiant. She wore a black dress that I knew cost more than Emily's monthly salary. Her hair was perfect. She wore the diamond earrings Margaret had left her. She smiled at the hostess, a dazzling, victorious smile. Michael looked like a man walking to the gallows. He was pale. His suit hung loosely on his frame. He was sweating. a fine sheen on his forehead despite the winter chill outside. He caught my eye across the room. I gave him a nearly imperceptible nod. Steady. They approached the table. Dad. Amanda leaned down and kissed my cheek. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and betrayal. You look great. Doesn't he look great, Michael? Michael swallowed hard. You look good, Robert. Sit down, I said. The waiter came. Amanda ordered a bottle of Cabernet. She was chattering, nervous, excited energy. She talked about the weather, about a new play in the theater district, about everything except the elephant sitting on the table. I let her talk. I let her fill the silence. It was the last time I would ever hear her voice unburdened by guilt. And so, she said. Finally, after the appetizers were cleared, she cut into her steak, the knife slicing through the meat with ease. You mentioned a decision about the estate. I did. I reached down and lifted the heavy leather bag. I placed it on the table. The glasses rattled slightly. But first, I said, a gift from your mother. Amanda frowned. She paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. Mom? Mom has been gone for 20 years. She left this for you, I said, for when you were ready. I pulled out the music box. In the dim restaurant light, the painted roses seemed to glow. It sat there, innocent and beautiful, a relic of a time when we were a family. Open it, I commanded. Amanda wiped her mouth with a linen napkin. She reached out. Her fingers were manicured. Perfect. She lifted the lid. Tink, tink, tink. The mechanism began to turn. The sweet, fragile notes of La Mayenne Rose drifted into the air. Amanda smiled. A polite, bored smile. It's pretty, Dad. A music box. Thank you. She reached to close the lid. Wait, I said. I pressed a small button, hidden under the velvet lining. The music stopped. The mechanism ground to a halt. For a second there was silence at the table. Then a voice cut through the air. A voice that was clear, sharp, and terrifyingly familiar. So when the old man passes, you inherit everything. Amanda froze. Her hand hovered over the box. Her eyes went wide, fixing on the spinning cylinder. Easily 12 million, her own voice replied from the box. Maybe 15, the shop. The building, the restaurant noise, the clinking silverware. The murmur of conversation seemed to fade away into a gray buzz. There was only the recording. And Michael? Jason's voice asked. Michael is a puppet, Amanda's voice said, cold, mocking. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him, and I'll divorce him. Michael made a sound, a choked, wounded noise. He covered his mouth with his hand. Amanda was paralyzed. She looked at the box, then at me. Her face had drained of all color. She looked like a wax figure. He has high blood pressure. The recording continued. Things happen to men his age. Accidents, strokes. Maybe we switch his meds. I stopped the tape. I looked at my daughter. Dad, she whispered. Her lips were trembling so hard she could barely form the word. Explain, I said. My voice was not loud. It was the voice of a judge passing a sentence. It's a joke, she stammered. She looked around the restaurant, as if checking for an audience. It's out of context, Jason. He has a dark sense of humor. We were just venting. A joke, I repeated. I reached into the bag again. I pulled out the black USB drive and set it on the table next to the wine glass. Is the apartment on Michigan Avenue a joke? I asked. Her eyes widened until I thought they might split. She stopped breathing. Are the calls to Dr. Stevens asking about the lethal threshold of stress a joke? I continued, leaning forward. Is the structural survey of my building a joke? Michael stood up. His chair fell backward with a loud crash. The entire restaurant went silent. Heads turned. You discussed killing him, Michael shouted. He wasn't acting now. The pain was real. You discussed killing your own father. Michael, no. Amanda reached for his arm. Please, listen to me. He recoiled as if she were made of fire. Don't touch me. Sit down, Amanda, I said. Dad, please. She started to cry. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her makeup. We didn't mean it. We were desperate. The market, we were drowning. Desperate people ask for help, I said. Greedy people plan funerals. I have 4 years of recordings, I said, pointing to the drive. I have photos of Jason entering your apartment. I have bank records showing the transfers you made to his account from the joint savings. Why? She wailed. Why didn't you say something? Why did you let me do this? I wanted to be wrong, I said, and that was the truth. It was the most painful truth of all. I prayed every single day that I was just a paranoid old man. I prayed you would come to me and tell me the truth. But you didn't, I whispered. The front door of the restaurant opened. A draft of cold air swept through the room. Detective Harrison walked in. He was in plain clothes, but he carried himself like the law. Detective Harrison is an old friend. We play chess on Sundays. Tonight he didn't look like a friend. He looked sad. He walked to our table. Amanda Vance, he said. Amanda looked at him, then at me. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She slumped in her chair. Police? She screamed. You called the police on your own daughter? No, I said. I picked up my water glass. My hand was steady. I called them on the woman who planned to murder Robert Vance. You're not my daughter right now, I said. My daughter wouldn't do this. Harrison took her arm gently but firmly. Miss Vance, you need to come with us. We have some questions about a conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. Dad, she screamed. I love you, please. I looked her in the eye. I looked past the tears, past the fear. I looked for the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. She wasn't there. No, Amanda, I said softly. You love $15 million. Harrison pulled her up. She was sobbing now, a raw, ugly sound. People were staring, whispering. I didn't care. The shame wasn't mine. They walked her out. I watched her go. I watched the door close behind her. The restaurant was deadly silent. Michael sat back down. He put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. I'm sorry, Robert, he wept. I'm so sorry I brought her into your life. I reached across the table. I put my hand on his shoulder. Don't be, I said. You didn't break her, Michael. She was broken a long time ago. I took a sip of water. It was cold, clean. You're free now, I said. The morning after the arrest, it rained. A cold, gray wash that scrubbed the city streets but couldn't clean the stain from our name. The news broke at 6,000 a.m. Local toy maker exposes murder plot. It was a small story in the grand scheme of the world, just a blip on the ticker. But in our world, it was a nuclear detonation. Jason Reed didn't stay to fight. He didn't try to defend Amanda. He did exactly what a parasite does when the host gets sick. He detached. He emptied Amanda's personal accounts, every cent of her savings, the emergency fund, the joint checking, and boarded a flight to Mexico City before the warrant was even signed. He left her with nothing but a lawyer she couldn't afford and a husband she had betrayed. Typical coward. He liked the idea of the kill, but he didn't have the stomach for the blood. Amanda lost everything in 48 hours. Her job at the firm was gone by noon the next day. Her friends, the ones who liked the summer house and the galas, stopped answering their phone. Her reputation was incinerated. She was released on bail, paid for by Michael of all people. A final act of mercy from a man walking away. Then, silence. 2 weeks passed. The shop was quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a funeral. I went back to work, because that is what I do. I wake up. I drink coffee. I fix things. I was standing at the counter, sanding a wooden block for a new rocking horse. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The rhythmic sound was soothing. It was simple. Wood doesn't lie. Wood doesn't plot. If wood is rotten, you cut it out. The bell above the door jingled. It wasn't the confident ring of a customer. It was a hesitant, shy sound. I didn't look up immediately. I finished the stroke of the sandpaper. Then I raised my eyes. It was Amanda. She stood in the doorway, bringing the cold air in with her. She looked broken. The expensive coat was gone, replaced by a simple jacket. Her hair, usually sprayed into submission, was pulled back in a loose, messy ponytail. She wore no makeup. She looked old. Not the kind of old that comes with years, but the kind that comes with exhaustion. She looked like a ghost haunting the place where she used to be alive. I put the sanding block down. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just watched. "Can I come in?" she asked. Her voice was small, cracking at the edges. "It's a public shop," I said. "We're open." She walked to the counter. Her steps were heavy. She didn't look at the toys. She looked at her hands. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a key. The key to the shop. The key I had given her when she was 16. She placed it on the glass counter. Clink. "I'm sorry," she said. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a strategy. It was a statement of fact. It was quiet, real, and devoid of calculation. For the first time in 6 years, I was looking at my daughter, not a reflection of Jason Reed. "I know," I said. We stood there in the silence. The dust motes danced between us. "What happens now?" she asked. She looked up and her eyes were red-rimmed. "Michael is filing for divorce. I have no job. I have nowhere to go." "Now," I said, "we fix it." She blinked, confused. "Fix it? Dad? I tried to kill you. I sat in a restaurant and listened to a man plan your death. And you failed," I said. "You failed because I stopped you. And I stopped you because I am your father." They reached under the counter and pulled out the music box. The evidence. I wound the key. Crank, crank. I opened the lid. La Vie en Rose began to play. The sweet, tinkling melody filled the heavy air. "Your mother left you the money," I said over the music. "It's in a blind trust. I've restructured it. You can't touch a penny of the principal for 5 years." "I don't want the money," she whispered. She covered her face with her hands. "I don't want any of it." "Good," I said, "because you have to earn it." She lowered her hands. "Earn it? You work here," I said. "Here?" She looked around the shop, bewildered. "Tuesdays and Thursdays," I said. "Minimum wage. You sweep the floors, you organize the inventory. You learn to strip varnish. You want me to work for minimum wage?" "I want you to learn," I said. My voice was hard, the voice of the master craftsman. "I want you to learn the value of $1 that you actually worked for. I want you to learn the value of something that can't be bought." She looked at the toys surrounding us, the broken dolls, the chip trains, the things that the world had thrown away, waiting for a second chance. "Do you think I can be fixed?" she asked. Her voice broke. "Dad, I'm rot." I looked at the picture of Margaret on the wall. She was watching us. "I fix broken things, Amanda," I said. "That's who I am." But wood is easy. People take work. I picked up a piece of coarse sandpaper and a wooden train engine that was covered in chipped lead paint. I walked around the counter. I held them out to her. "Start with the train," I said. "Strip it down to the bare wood. Remove every layer of the old paint. It will take you all day." She looked at the sandpaper. She looked at me. For a moment I saw the hesitation, the pride, fighting to survive. Then it broke. She took the train. She took the paper. "Okay," she whispered. She walked to the small workbench in the corner, the apprentice bench. She sat down. She took off her coat. She picked up the train. She hesitated, then applied the sandpaper. Scrape. She began to work. I went back to my station. I picked up my own tools. We didn't speak. There was no need for words. The sound of the sandpaper was enough. It was the sound of layers being removed. It was the sound of a very slow, very painful repair beginning. It has been 6 months. The seasons have turned, grinding forward with the same slow inevitability as the gears in a grandfather clock. Summer burned out into a crisp autumn, and now winter has settled over Chicago like a heavy wool blanket. Snow falls on State Street. It muffles the sound of the traffic, turning the city into a silent movie. Inside the shop, the heater clanks and hisses, a mechanical heartbeat that keeps the cold at bay. Michael moved to Atlanta in March. He stopped by one last time before he left. He looked different, lighter, as if he had set down a heavy pack he'd been carrying for years. He met a woman there. He told me on the phone last Sunday. A school teacher, someone kind. "I'm happy, Robert," he said. The static on the line couldn't hide the truth in his voice. "Good," I told him. You deserve to be. He calls me every week. We talk about baseball, about the weather, about everything except the woman hunched over the workbench 10 feet away from me. He is the son I never had, and I am the father he needed. We are connected by a scar, but the wound has healed. Amanda is still here. She arrives every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 a.m. sharp. She doesn't wear the heels anymore. She wears jeans and a flannel shirt covered in wood dust. Her hands, once soft and manicured, are rough now. There is a callus forming on her thumb from the sanding block. We don't talk much. We don't need to. The silence between us isn't the heavy, loaded silence of the past. It's the focused silence of a workshop. It's the sound of glue drying, of brushes against wood, of breathing. She is stripping the varnish off a 1920s dollhouse today. It's tedious work, chemical stripper. Steel wool, patience. I watch her from my station. I see the way her brow furrows when she hits a stubborn patch of paint. I see the way she bites her lip. It's learning. She isn't checking her phone. She isn't looking at the real estate listings. She is looking at the grain of the wood. She is learning that you cannot rush a restoration. If you force the wood, it splinters. If you rush the glue, it doesn't hold. Yesterday, something happened. She was painting the trim on the dollhouse window. Her hand slipped, leaving a smudge of blue on the white siding. In the old days, the days of the legacy and the greed, she would have thrown the brush. She would have screamed. Yesterday, she just stopped. She looked at the smudge. "Whoops," she muttered. Then she laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was a small, self-deprecating sound, a release of tension. I froze. My hand tightened around my screwdriver. It sounded exactly like Margaret. I looked up at the photo on the wall. For a second, the ghost wasn't haunting us anymore. She was just visiting. "Turpentine," I said, keeping my voice even. "On a Q-tip. It will come right off." "Thanks, Dad," Amanda said. "Dad? Not Robert. Not the obstacle. Dad." I walked to the front window and looked out at the falling snow. The flakes were large and wet, sticking to the glass. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't joy. Joy is too bright a word for what we have. It was peace. In the operating room, after a long, difficult bypass, there is a moment when you take the patient off the machine. You stop the pump. You wait. You watch the monitor to see if the heart can beat on its own. It's a terrifying moment. But when you see that first steady rhythm, you know the patient is going to live. It wasn't the ending I wanted. I wanted my daughter to be perfect. I wanted her to never know the darkness that was inside her. But this is the ending we needed. I turned back to the shop. The music box sits on the high shelf behind the counter. I haven't touched it in 6 months. It doesn't hold secrets anymore. It doesn't hold recordings of betrayal or plots for murder. It just holds a song. It sits there as a reminder that some things have to be taken apart completely, down to the screws and the springs before they can be put back together. I saved my life. I saved the building. But more importantly, I saved my daughter's soul. I had to break her heart to do it. We had to strip away the varnish of greed and entitlement until I found the wood underneath. But the wood is still good. It's strong. It just needed to be found. Amanda looked up from the dollhouse. She caught me watching her. She offered a small, tentative smile. It didn't reach her eyes fully yet, but it was there. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "You missed a spot on the eaves." She rolled her eyes. A flash of the old Amanda, but without the venom. She dipped her brush. She went back to work. "My name is Robert Vance. I am 75 years old, and I am still fixing things." The silence in the shop feels different now. It's no longer empty, but full of a quiet, hard-earned hope. If this story of betrayal, heartbreak, and the slow road to redemption resonated with you, I invite you to like and subscribe. There are many more broken things in this world that need fixing, and I'd be honored to share those stories with you too.